Of a month on January 9th, a Wednesday of 2019, Richard Lighthouse. I am just so ecstatic to be able to have him on the show today, for him to be able to go over his slides and talk about the interesting number of books that he has and the interesting number of ways that the targeted individual and the technologies that are being used on the society as a whole, and not just here, but around the United States, around the planet. So enough of me being said. I'm going to try to just keep this as simple as me and let him do as much talking as he can. And Richard, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, Wayne. Thanks for having me on your show.
You also, and thank you for coming on, and thank you for the books that you've written, and all the work that you've done in the past on exposing the truths of this being this being a fact and something that our military and the fusion centers and our government has been using against us. Could you go into a little bit about what you want to talk about with the viewers today? I'm going to just let you go ahead and take it over. We're going to have the slides as you go ahead and talk. We're going to put those on as you go. So, hey, go for it, my friend.
Okay, thank you, Wayne. The story that I'd like to tell folks today is actually got a long history with it, and there's a number of individuals that started this movement, or this transparency movement, to uncover this government corruption, and it runs very deep, and there's a long history behind it. Dr. John Hall is probably one of the most famous participants in the TI community, but there were a number of folks that preceded him, including Bob Fletcher and a gentleman by the name of Gerald Holland, and he's in Philadelphia, I believe. And this goes back to at least the 1980s and possibly even longer. But Dr. Hall's book starts out with satellite terrorism in America, and he's able to kind of outline many of the things that are going on. But unfortunately, it was only until recently that we're able to document specific locations, personnel that are involved at the government level, and some of the details of the technology that's being used. And that's a huge step forward because that's something that we haven't been able to do in the TI community for more than 30 years. And of course, what's critical about that is you can't file a lawsuit and just blame the US government. There's got to be somebody on the other end of that lawsuit as a defendant. And you've got to have strong, solid evidence to back it up. And so I think what we've done during 2018 with a number of the TI community websites and leadership groups, such as targetedjustice.com, PAX International, Freedom for Targeted Individuals, there's a large number of them, and you can find them on my website at rlighthouse.com. I should mention that all of the ebooks for targeted individuals on my website are free. I encourage you to download them. I also have a number of books on technical subjects, but that's really not part of our discussion today. So one of the things that I'd like to emphasize starting off is there is a great deal of disinformation in the TI community. And that's very deliberate on the part of the CIA. And in my opinion, the CIA really runs this show from the highest levels of government. There are many high-ranking government officials that are involved with this, that have full knowledge of it, that continue to fund it from one year to the next. And the amounts that go into this targeted individual program run into the many billions, many billions. And this has been going on for many years. It's disturbing on many levels that our government and individual government employees would be willing to stoop to the level of torture, literal torture on a daily basis for more than 1 million people worldwide. I've recently written a book called Targeted Individuals' Estimated Numbers, and the best estimate that I can provide is about 170,000 adults in the United States are currently being targeted as targeted individuals. And many in that group, unfortunately, are not even aware of the program. They're told by their doctors that they're hearing voices in their heads and that they're just delusional and that they need to take strong doses of medicine and that will solve the problem. And unbeknownst to both the victim and the doctor, is it's part of a very sophisticated CIA program that extends from the days of MK Ultra. Frank Church, a senator from the 1970s, tried to shut these programs down, illegal programs by the CIA down. If you're interested, you can find that on the internet. The Church Committee hearings of 1975, they were blockbusters, and Senator Church did his best to shut these down. Unfortunately, the CIA just moved the location, changed the names, and kept doing what they wanted to do. And that's part of the reason I advocate the abolishment of the CIA organization. And I think as this comes to greater light, I think this will go a long way in seeing that the CIA is shut down permanently and all of those employees scattered, retired, or put on permanent leave. Those employees are culpable. The ones that willingly participate should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. There is nothing in the U.S. Constitution that gives the CIA, the Air Force Space Command, the Department of Homeland Security any right to conduct the criminal activities and operations that have been going on. It is disturbing on so many levels. So, with that brief introduction, let me try to provide some of the details. I recently published a book called The Governors of GangStalking, which identified for the first time 2 key top executives in the Department of Homeland Security. They are literally 2 steps away from President Trump. Their names are David Glaw and Brian Murphy, and you will find the detailed information about them in this book, or I encourage you to visit the DHS website at dhs.gov, and you can find these people for yourself. One of the things that I'll emphasize as I go through this, I've provided a lot of information, and I encourage readers to do their own research. I am not acting as an authority in any way or shape or form. I am simply providing information, and I encourage readers to do their own research. So what is disturbing about the Department of Homeland Security being set up like this? DHS was set up after the 9/11 World Trade Center incidents, and President George Bush set that program up, and the system has been thoroughly abused. What we find is there's an entire organization with thousands of employees who show up for work every day with the intent and purpose of torturing people. That is a felony in the United States federal laws, in federal code. And I have pointed out a number of those laws that are in serious violation in a letter that was written by myself and with the help of others in the targeted justice community and from the Houston TI meetup group that meets once a month. So many of us have signed that letter. We've included the communities of some large organizations in that. So the letter that you find on my website, which has also been printed and published on a number of other websites, contains what we sent via certified mail to the Department of Homeland Security, demanding that they stop these illegal operations. And we've quoted chapter and verse right out of the United States Code, the laws that accompany that. So if we could see that first slide. So that slide, I believe, is a cover image of the ebook, The Governors of GangStalking. It is available for free on my website, as well as a number of websites. You can search for it. And part of the emphasis on that book is how we were able to identify these 2 top executives at the Department of Homeland Security. And we did that through the brave efforts of 3 police whistleblowers who, in 2018, individually came forward on a talk show, and I even spoke to one of them on the phone for about 45 minutes, and they described that the fusion centers in the United States are used for control stations for gang stalking. Every state in the United States has a primary fusion center, and a number of states have secondary centers as well. For example, here in Texas, we have the primary fusion center in Austin, and then we have secondary centers, one in Houston, one in Dallas, and I believe one in San Antonio. And all of these fusion centers coordinate together with the Department of Homeland Security. They're provided training, they're provided key personnel, they're provided grant money, they're provided database, software, contact lists. They're given policies and procedures and told you must follow these policies and procedures or you're not going to get your grant money every year. So basically, the DHS has set this up deliberately so that they can pretend that these fusion centers are private organizations and therefore not subject to freedom of information requests. That's the reason they went to these great lengths with these fusion centers, to keep them separate, in theory, from the federal government or from state and local governments. But all of the employees are on federal or state government payrolls. So there is a way to get FOIA requests in. You're going to have to retrieve it through the organizations that support the fusion centers, such as directly through DHS. In Houston, you could request those documents through the City of Houston or the Houston Police Department that contribute employees and time and effort to that fusion center. So there's other ways to get to the fusion center and the information that they contain. But the emphasis I wanted to make there is that 3 police whistleblowers came forward and told us that the gang stalking was coordinated and controlled through these fusion centers. What I did then was do some research online to find out who was funding it. And so the key statement or phrase I want to give here is follow the money. And I encourage other researchers to do the same thing. Follow the money. Where's the funding coming from and who benefits? So that makes a lot of sense. It was very quickly in the searches that I did, it became apparent that the Department of Homeland Security's Intelligence and Analysis Office were the folks that were providing the funding and the direction and the key personnel to all the fusion centers. And the funds above them come down from the Director of National Intelligence, the DNI. Now, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence is a very large program. These folks basically run all 17 of the intelligence agencies in the U.S. government. So that funding, if you go to the DNI.gov website, you'll see statements that they have made that they provide 100% of the funding that goes to the Department, the DHS Intelligence and Analysis Group, who then provide funds and funding and grant money to these fusion centers. So we have a direct link tracing from these fusion centers to DHS Intelligence and Analysis Office and the DNI. That's very important. Later on, I will discuss how targeted individuals are tracked through these offices and how the FBI is involved. That also is very important because it helps us identify key personnel that are involved. We want to identify the people, not just the organizations. These organizations are deliberately secretive, and we've got to be smarter than they are to uncover them and unmask them. So I'm encouraging other researchers out there to do their own homework and look into these organizations. The National Counterterrorism Center, run under the DNI.gov organization, is clearly involved. They are the ones who identify and put on what's called the TIDE database. They are the ones that list and control the international targeted individuals. So TIs that are located in Europe, Asia, and Africa, all of that is run through the National Counterterrorism Center. And the person that is the director of that center is a man named Joseph McGuire. He's the director. He is culpable. He is fully responsible for his actions and the actions that are happening in his organization. And that's somebody we want to keep in mind. So there's two significant databases that affect targeted individuals worldwide. There's a database that is run within the United States that's called the Terrorist Screening Center, and that's run here in the United States. And I forget the gentleman's name right off the top of my head, but Cable. It starts with a K. His last name is Cable. And he is the director of the Terrorist Screening Center. They are the ones that identify and help select targeted individuals in the United States. And that goes into a database called the Terrorist Screening Database that is loosely called the Terror Watch List. So there's the point I'm trying to make here is there's a number of feed boxes that flow into what people know as the Terror Watch List. I think you'll see on the screen now a diagram of a targeted individual. And I will admit there's some minor errors on here, and I will correct those soon, but it gives you a general outline or a general flow of what a targeted individual is and what they encounter in their daily lives. Starting from the left side of this diagram, you'll see I'm showing a random person, and these people are nominated by the CIA, the FBI, the DHS, other government agencies, and unfortunately, it can even be random. Many times it involves particular activities such as a whistleblower within a government agency or a political activist. Other people that we know have been targeted are labor union leaders and scientists that won't toe the government line. So what we're finding is there's a broad-based diversity and background to these folks that are being selected for this. But the first thing they do is here in the United States, they put them on the FBI's Terror Screening Center database. And from there, that feeds into other databases and allows it eventually goes to Interpol and NATO and a number of other organizations internationally. But the first step is the individual's name is entered through the FBI onto the terror watch list. And there's a number of phases. Nothing happens right away. The CIA gets involved. Their division called Psychological Operations gets involved to identify key family members that are part of the person's support group. It's generally family members, but it could be friends. And those are the people that they target to manipulate. And I won't go into too much detail on that, but I think most TIs will know what I'm talking about. The folks that set that up and design that are the CIA in Denver, and they've got a group called PSYOPs, or Psychological Operations. They are the ones that figure out which of your family members are your support team, your support group, and they're the ones that they go after with the microwave manipulation and the mind manipulation that was learned through MK Ultra. So the next step, without getting into too much detail, I'll briefly cover this. You'll see how this information feeds to the Fusion Center, and soon after, the individual begins to experience gang stalking and the breakdown of their family relationships. And it's very disturbing on a number of levels. It does meet the definition of psychological torture under the Geneva Conventions. That's very important for legal matters and lawsuits. Under Article 32 of the Geneva Conventions, psychological torture is a war crime and punishable by up to and including the death penalty. So that's how serious it is. So the folks in the CIA and the FBI and the DHS that are involved, they can be brought before the International Criminal Court and charged with war crimes. It's a felony offense here in the United States and a war crime punishable by the death penalty. Very, very serious. From the Fusion Center, the Air Force Space Command, which is headed by General John Raymond, gets involved. These folks are located mostly at Schriever Air Force Base. They control more than 175 satellites in orbit. The most, or all of those satellites have weapons on board. The most important satellite constellation group that they use is called the Navstar system, the Navstar GPS system. That's used for tracking you. And I've got a separate diagram that we'll show in a bit to show how that particular satellite system works, and the Air Force Space Command uses it to track everyone. Very important emphasis here, not just targeted individuals. Everyone in the United States is currently being tracked by a satellite constellation group called Navstar. These are very high-speed computers. The latest generation has 8 antennas. It can track, according to my best estimates, about 800 million people at once from one satellite. Amazing feat of engineering, all done through the Air Force Space Command near Colorado Springs. So the weapons that are involved, one of them is called a Vercator. This, again, is also fairly recent information. For more than 30 years now, TIs have been experiencing these satellite microwave attacks, and Harlan Gerard in Philadelphia was one of the first folks to identify it and say specifically, this is coming from a satellite. And the weapon is called a Vercator. It was first launched in 1987, and it's part of what's called the Thunderbolt system. It was manufactured by a company called Titan Corporation in San Leandro, California. It has since been acquired by a company called L3 Technologies. I encourage those that want to research that to look it up. So some of the other technologies that are involved include the cell tower system that's operated by a number of cell tower companies. Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, they're all involved. They've all got their own cell towers, and every time I've gone to a new city, I have determined that any operational cell tower, every single operational cell tower is emitting microwave pulses at your head 24 hours a day. So any cell tower that's roughly within about 2 miles of you is trying to hit you with microwave bullets. And this is literally, it's very important. Everyone is being tracked and hit with these microwave pulse technologies, not just targeted individuals. The other way of looking at that is to say that everyone in the United States is a targeted individual. They're simply not aware of it. Most of them are just not aware of it. So unfortunately, this is something that we're going to have to deal with. It's not just a small group that's complaining about this. This affects everyone. The microwaves cause brain damage. We know that from the Cuban diplomat situation. It causes white matter deterioration in the brain. It symptomatically looks like a concussion. It is very serious. It causes short-term memory loss. The microwaves also cause difficulty concentrating, and this is traced to the depletion of calcium that occurs in the brain with these intense microwave attacks. So very important that the Cuban diplomats and the diplomats that just returned from China are experiencing the same thing. That they are targeted individuals in every sense of the word. They are getting gang stalked at their homes and houses, and the mainstream media is refusing to acknowledge or publish that. They do have an attorney representing them. His name is Mark Zaid, Z-A-I-D, and he has a law firm, I believe, in Washington, D.C., and very capable, astute attorney that is working to help these diplomats. And again, they are targeted individuals in every sense of the word. Unfortunately, the State Department has worked closely with the CIA and has put a gag order on their own employees. They are not allowed to speak to the press about it. In the one instance where we saw Catherine Werner, mother, come forward, Catherine Werner herself is under gag order and was told not to communicate with the media. So the only reason the State Department would do this is because they're culpable. They're fully aware. Mike Pompeo is former CIA director. He knows about the program. He knows what it is. And here he is at the State Department trying to cover it up. So I can't say enough negative words about that, but I won't go into it.
You and me both, and one of the things that we find, it's the same thing when one of the people, after they go to their church or they go to when they go to one of their places in the communities, and they find that they after they go to the from their churches and explain to one of their ministers, or they go to a psychiatric place that they were given to go talk to these people. They are given the California wave. I know you've probably heard of the expression, the California wave, where they're given a 1370 or a 5150 diagnose, and that being the same type of thing that these fusion centers working closely with all parts of the different parts of the community.
Yeah, I agree. There's a huge complicity with the mental health community and the doctors that are involved there. They are fully aware of what's going on, and they actively contribute to cover it up, which is despicable on so many levels. But we'll save that detail for a different conversation. But I'm glad that you did bring that up. The mental health community is seriously involved in this, and certainly part of the cover-up.
Well, just look at how many people in the past have gone to and talked and brought the things up in following the Cuban and Havana and China scenario. Just following that, you're basically reading, and TIs are picking through every single message, and you're seeing that the information that they get is a pure sign of being a targeted individual, and they continue to grow the story this way, or they grow the story that way, or they take out a little this, or they say that even the sonic weapons or microwave weapons that are being used from either the towers or the satellite or Voicetoskull are, we know that they've been in existence for years, but they continue to make the story compatible so they can basically turn it into nothing. That's what they want to do. They want to wear it, they want to grind it and turn it into nothing. And thank you for continuing your it's such a blessing to know that you're using the Cuban and the China information in your story today. Thank you. I'll let you go back.
I absolutely agree, Wayne, and that's helpful. So I did mention that the CIA developed this psychological and physical torture program through the MK Ultra. It grew out of the MK Ultra program. There's a great deal of historical information that can be found, and many books have been published. Dr. Colin Ross in Dallas is a psychiatrist that published a book called The CIA Doctors, where he details it in great length, some of the real horrifying aspects of the experimental research that was done by some of these CIA doctors, with the goal being how to control the mind, or how to manipulate it to where the person has no control of their own senses and self-being. So for folks that are interested, I encourage you to research that and look it up. So if I can, I'll talk a little bit more about the Air Force Space Command, and I do have a diagram that goes with this. Again, this is primarily done out of Schriever Air Force Base. One of the first people to identify the top secret nature and the corruption that is occurring at Schriever Air Force Base under the Air Force Space Command is a doctor by the name of Bill Deagle, Dr. Bill Deagle. And he was there during the 1990s. He's done a number of interviews on it. I encourage you to look those up. There's a very important 5-minute interview that he did where he summarized his experiences at Schriever Air Force Base. And one of the things that he brought out was, in addition to all the classified and top secret work going on, they've got a supercomputer there at Schriever Air Force Base.
In my exposures, I have been in underground cities. I have worked for the Iridium Satellite Project. I've been on the doctor for U.S. Space Command, Strategic Defense, the Echelon Project, and the World Identification. And I've taken care of people that have been in the most classified facilities on the planet in Colorado. And Colorado has more classified material underground there and more computing power, quantum computing, than all the rest of the planet to get, put together by a very large order of magnitude. And most of these facilities are in underground cities. And I was in one of them, and it was very impressive.
That computer and its upgrades still exist at Schriever Air Force Base, which is primarily an underground base, a deep underground base. And there are tunnels that extended over into the Cheyenne Mountain Complex, where during a nuclear confrontation, all the employees would be evacuated. So they've got a primary system at Schriever Air Force Base and a backup system in the Cheyenne Mountain complex. Very
like Iron
important.
Mountain? Like Iron Mountain? Is it something like the Iron Mountain?
Well, this particular complex is called the Cheyenne Mountain complex.
Cheyenne Mountain, okay.
And
All
it's
right.
all underground. It's just a short
goodness.
trip away. The Cheyenne Mountain Underground Complex has been there since, I believe, about the 1950s. And it has been upgraded and renovated many times. And it's there primarily for the military crews to move to in the event of a nuclear emergency. But they're all connected by underground tunnels. They don't need to use surface roads to get to it. There's a giant network of underground tunnels in the Denver and Colorado Springs area, including the primary CIA offices for their domestic headquarters. And I'm going to keep picking at the CIA because they are the folks that set up and fund this entire program. And I know there's a lot of folks. I get calls and emails from people all over the world insisting that there are other individuals or other small groups that are running the show, and I have no evidence to support that. We have a great deal of evidence that suggests that the CIA's domestic headquarters in Denver, it runs the entire show and provides the funding for it. On the gang stalking side, they provide the funding through a black budget that feeds into the Director of National Intelligence, and that money and funding and programs make its way to the Terrorist Screening Center at the FBI and to the Department of Homeland Security, where the gang stalking operations are run. They also provide the billions of dollars that go into these sophisticated satellite systems that are operated out of Schriever Air Force Base. So I want to emphasize that this is primarily a CIA program, and they are running it. They call the shots. There is on the political side, an organization called the Council on Foreign Relations that was founded by David Rockefeller, who passed away last year. There are many videos. I won't try to go into the details on this, but I will encourage you to look up the basics of the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR.org. There are 4 people at the top of this organization that work closely with the CIA, and their goal, unfortunately, is to get control of the United States government and its population. It is one of the most disturbing, mind-boggling ideas. It's difficult to believe that anyone would take on something like this, but they've been doing this, been in the works for almost 100 years. And there's a long history that goes with it. I encourage folks to look it up. It is closely connected to the forming of the Federal Reserve in 1915, approximately. The Federal Reserve had both the Rockefellers and Rothschilds and a number of other wealthy families involved. It is connected to the founding of the United Nations. David Rockefeller provided the land for the building of the first United Nations building. It is connected with that as well. So folks that are interested, I encourage you to go out and do the research on that. Let me talk a little bit about gang stalking, because there's going to be listeners and viewers that are not familiar with that term and don't really understand what it means. Initially, this is an idea, a psychological torture method that was developed by the Stasi, the secret police over in Germany, both during and after World War II. The Stasi had a very nasty reputation for harassing, brutalizing, murdering, and making people disappear. And to this day, you'll find that German citizens, I've traveled to Germany many times, German citizens are particularly sensitive about their privacy rights, and primarily due to the ones who went through and experienced that Stasi period in the 1940s and 1950s. And very difficult for Americans to comprehend, because we just haven't seen anything like that yet. But targeted individuals here in the United States know what I'm talking about. Almost daily break-ins of your household. Things can be stolen. Chairs will be moved around just so that you'll know that they've been there. Your valuable items, things that might be family memorabilia, will be stolen. it's very unnerving to come home and find that your house has been broken in, and TIs are reluctant to report it because the police are going to take your file and trash it or make it disappear, and they'll mock you. And I've had this reported to me by a number of targeted individuals just in the last year. They're afraid to report it to police, but the thing we need to emphasize is there's always a way to report it and document it. I encourage folks, if your house is getting broken in, the best way to make it stop is report it. You don't have to file a police report by going to a police station. There's lots of opportunities to send an email to the police chief or one of the captains in the local police department or the sheriff's office. There are email addresses online. Fill out all the information, get pictures if you want, attach it and send the email. And now you've got proof that you told them. You've got proof that you said, I reported this crime, and when it happens again, you can say, I'm reporting this crime again. And to build up that document database, so when you do have your day in court, you've got something to back it up. Because the first thing the judge is going to ask you is, did you report these crimes? So I encourage folks to document, and report it where you can. It doesn't have to be petty. If you've got something minor that might be missing, I wouldn't suggest that. But if you get valuables that are stolen and things like that, then certainly you should report it. That would be what a reasonable person would do anyway. So I encourage folks to report the break-ins, to report the harassment. You can do it. You don't have to do it in person. You can do it by email. There's generally forms. Most of the major cities have a form you can fill out online for the police department or the sheriff's office. Use them. Let me cover some of the slides on the directed energy weapons. I've got a number of slides talking about the Vercator. The Vercator was patented the patent was filed, I believe, in 1982, and the patent was granted in 1983 to a man named Donald J. Sullivan. And he worked for a small research facility in Albuquerque, New Mexico, that has since been acquired by a company called ATK. And there is a long history there of top secret research going on, all involved microwave weapons. The Titan Corporation picked up a lot of that because they became the production facility for these Vercator weapons. And now today, L3 Technologies uses that facility to promote their microwave weapons and capabilities. All the high-speed triggers, for example, that go with these devices that can be used for other purposes. But the microwave weapons is just one generation of the weapons that are available to the Air Force Space Command at Schriever Air Force Base. We have a number of social media profiles where Air Force personnel have told us there are 9 different weapon systems mounted on satellites in orbit. 9 different weapon systems. Some of these weapons can be considered weapons of mass destruction. That is a very important term that can be used to explain how the United States is violating the 1967 Outer Space Treaty. Very important. I wrote a short ebook on it documenting the places where the 1967 Outer Space Treaty was being violated, and I made certain that a number of countries, there are a number of consulates here in the Houston area, and I went out of my way to make sure many of those consulates received that information and they were aware that the United States government was violating its treaty commitments and who was doing it. So that's something that folks can do in some of these bigger cities. In Chicago, New York, and LA, there are foreign consulates that are available. Get them some of this information. Tell them what's going on, because their own government employees are being affected by this in their own countries. And because of satellites weapons being used, there's no one that they can go arrest, because the arrests are beyond the authority of the local police and policing officials. Even though they may be aware of what it is, there's nobody that's operating that system within the borders of their country. It needs to be made clear that these weapons are operated from one location, Schriever Air Force Base. So that should be very helpful to some of our international TI folks.
And I also believe that with that information you just gave us, that they'll be able to go to their town hall meetings, and like Richmond, California did, and basically bring it to their councils or their town hall meetings in their community. And hey, if there's other TIs in, say, St. Helena or say Santa Rosa, well, we know in Santa Rosa there's probably thousands and thousands. They could take that information and petition that satellite information that you just gave to tell them that they want to be a protected city in that town, for them to make the law to be protected from our government, so that that satellite law will be protecting, not being used against the people in its own community. Isn't that true?
That's true. There are a number of, I believe the state of Michigan and the state of Maine have passed laws regarding the use of directed energy weapons. Unfortunately, it hasn't resulted in any reduction in the use of those weapons. I think
but at least
primarily
they can do
because
it. You know, at least they can do it for right off the bat. You know, they can do it. You know.
Absolutely. I would encourage city councils to pursue that, pass laws that restrict, make it serious crime. Gang stalking is a serious crime. Make it a local crime as well. Identify how it can be tracked and how people can file special reports. We now know where the satellites are being controlled. We can certainly sue. They are overhead, and one of the slides I want to show in just a minute is one that anyone can pull up. It's at a website that's called In the Sky, with a hyphen in between it, in-the-sky.org, and they have a satellite map that anyone can pull up that shows the GPS tracking satellites that are called Navstar. It's the very first group of satellites that shows up on the map, and anyone can pull up this map at this website, and it will show you live, real time, where the GPS satellites are overhead that are tracking you and hitting you with these microwave pulses. So I encourage folks to look that up. And this is not the only website where you can do that. There's another one called intoyo.com that also has live satellite tracking maps for these Navstar satellites. So the diagram that you just pulled up is very helpful because it describes in very simple terms. Now, it doesn't cover everything. I've had a number of folks tell me, well, what about this and what about this? You know, they can also send the program back up to the satellite. It doesn't have to go through a cell tower, and that's correct. There are many ways to deliver that microwave pulse, but one of the emphasis that you get out of this diagram that it's all controlled from Schriever Air Force Base. There's a supercomputer there that allows them to take the precise GPS coordinates that are attained via the speed of light and bounced off of a person's head. They can direct specific subliminal messages at that same person, and it transits from second to second wherever they're at. It can be sent through a cell tower, or it can be sent back through the satellite system, and they can be attacked with subliminal messages from a satellite rather than the cell towers. So there is some flexibility in the system in the way that it's designed. It is clear that the majority of the targeting that's done is from the ground through the cell towers, primarily because it's far less expensive than building additional satellites.
Sort of like the movie Enemy of the State, then, huh? Sort of like the movie Enemy of the State.
Very much so. Very much so. There was some technology. I've seen that movie. It does represent how quickly the government can identify and locate and track people on the ground. And in fact, it's even faster than what they demonstrate in that movie. It's the speed of light, and it goes from 1 second to the next. They already know where you are, exactly where you are at any second of the day. I explained in a previous video that I was at Home Depot a couple of months ago, and I was talking to some of the men, the work crews that wait outside of Home Depot, and some of them have come here from Central America, and they're just looking for work. And one of the things I asked two of these guys, I said, put your hand on the top of your head, on the top back part of your head, and I showed him where, and he immediately said to me, "What is that?" And you can feel the microwave pulses. So these guys had only been in the United States for a few weeks, and yet they were already being actively tracked. And it's quite likely that they were actively tracked from their home in Central America. So what is clear is that everyone is being tracked. Everyone in the United States is being tracked. Even people that have recently arrived in the United States are being tracked. A lot of that, now here's something that you might not figure. The Air Force Space Command does not share a lot of the details of the technology in their program with the Department of Homeland Security. Okay? They work within a silo. These groups work within a silo some of the time because all of the information they handle is top secret. And it's called secure compartmentalized information. That means it must stay within the silo. So even though the Air Force Space Command knows your exact location at any given second, the gang stalkers may lose track of you, following you around the neighborhood. They won't know to call the Air Force Space Command and get your exact coordinates because they don't have immediate access to that information sometimes. And they certainly are not aware of the fact that they too are being tracked and hit with microwave pulses. That's the irony of the situation, is that FBI agents, DHS agents, all of these gang stalkers are being hit and tracked with the exact same microwave weapons, and they're not even aware of it. But if they knew that it caused brain damage, they might be less willing to work for the DHS or the FBI to commit these crimes. But interesting enough, I hope that this information gets out to them and discourages them from continuing to do these gang stalking programs. We will see.
You know, one of the things is that you and I both know is that when a person's trying to tell somebody about they are being targeted and the towers and the satellites are being used to, and sometimes line of sight, whether it be neighbors or a car or a van, you know, somebody's working with one of the fusion centers, you have the mindset and understanding that the radiation that comes from these technologies makes it hard for the people that you're trying to tell to basically comprehend and want to be involved and even grasp without denying. Everyone knows that when you're going in for radiation treatments, you're in complete denial. Your body is rejecting the radiation, is rejecting the treatments, it's fighting it. So why can't people be more, maybe through the video that you're talking about here, people will be more understanding after sharing this video and this DVDs with others. They'll understand that it's the radiation that's making them deny and reject wanting to help and listen to other targeted individuals. What do you say about that?
No, I say that's absolutely correct, Wayne. There are so many complexities of this program and the targeting and the gang stalking. We're just covering kind of a surface level here today, but it's slightly different for every person. We're able to see that the CIA and the gang stalking program is different for each person, but it does seem to be maybe a dozen different categories. So there's some folks that only get gang stalking, and that there's some folks that get very intense directed energy weapons with very intense gang stalking. And the V2K, which is psychologically destroying. I have so much sympathy for folks that are going through that. Very disturbing. It is true psychological torture, and one of the main reasons we've got to stop this program. But you bring up a good point. There are many, many complexities to this. We're just covering a kind of a brief overline today, and these diagrams that I'm presenting can't give you all of the details on one page, but it does give you a starting point where you can do more research. And there's people such as yourself, Wayne, that are in the community that are actively outreaching to community members, trying to answer their questions, trying to get them both medical help and emotional support. And we want to encourage that 110%, because we're going to see more and more new TIs this year. That during that first 3 to 6 month period, it's very difficult. It's traumatic in so many ways, and we really need to have a system or systems in place to try to help these folks, because unfortunately that's when we see the suicides, is when we get people that feel so hopeless and lost, and they've lost all of their emotional support groups from family and friends, and it's something that we can prevent. It is preventable. But you bring up a good point.
Well, you know, one of the things is I want you to think about not only coming back on again, but I want you to think in the future, if I were to be able to set up an open forum dialogue with you remember the first thing you mentioned was Bob Fletcher. Now I've done shows with Bob Fletcher personally, so I've had him on for more than 2 hours, and he is the bee's knees when it comes to these technologies and the understandings of how the government works. Like you said, he goes back so deep in the understanding of exposing these. He sat at the Senate and given the Senate information on the things that he was told and asked to do for certain Senate members himself. So I'd like to someday have you, well, Bob is still being active as much as he can. You know, he slowed down with Mary. Let's all say a prayer for him and Mary. Let's all say a prayer and thank him for this 2019, for him to have the strength and energy to continue. I'd like to have Bob Fletcher, you, Scott Hensler, who's worked with Motorola, and Karen Stewart. You know, you've had dialogue with Karen Stewart, who's a whistleblower from the NSA, and I'd like to have those four members and yourself, you know, 4 people on an open forum like panel where people will be able to type in their questions to you and put it up, and you'll be able to answer and have like an open forum dialogue. That would be something in the future. If we had to rent like a Ramada or something to do in the future, maybe I'll be able to think of something, but I'd like to also be able to invite you back. This is just a small taste, and I'd like you to be able to come back and use this podium as much as you like. So I really thank you for all the things that you've brought up today, and if there's anything you want to continue to talk about, please, we have more time. So
Okay, yeah, great. I would like to touch on a couple of key things. We have sent demand letters, which are basically cease and desist letters to General Raymond at the Air Force Space Command in Colorado Springs. We've sent a cease and desist letter to the Department of Homeland Security and copied as many of the co-workers and employees on it so that they are all aware of what's going on. We're hoping that that information will get out and that it will at least begin to discourage a lot of what's going on. I, again, want to encourage folks to download my free ebooks. There's a lot of good information there. Lighthouse.com. I'd like to encourage folks to join the class action lawsuit at targetedjustice.com. There is a way to sign up for that. There is no obligation or commitment on your part. They just need to answer a few questions and identify yourself. And the team there will get back to you after they are able to better organize some of the legal issues. But it is a mountain of legal research that is going into this effort. I hope that folks will understand the complexity of this case and the standard of evidence that has to be raised and maintained, and the mountain of research that has to be done to support it. So we need your help, support, and donations. I also want to encourage folks to visit the other really good websites out there: Freedom for Targeted Individuals, PAX International. There's a number of organizations that have started recently, both here in the United States and internationally as well. One of my favorites here in the United States is also Frank over at Targeted Massachusetts. Outstanding forum that they run every week, very helpful. If you're a new TI, get online and join into Frank and Ella Free's weekly conference calls. You'll get a lot of support, you'll get a lot of answers, very helpful. PAX also is a good source of the conference calls. If you go to their website, you can get more information there.
one of the things I want the men and women to understand is, like you said, not all targeting is the same. So my website, Conspiracy Network TV, has a vast of information. And I don't know if you've looked at it, but it basically has the evidences and proof on how they can participate on using those ways that they can contact and be supportive, using support groups with each other to make our lives easier. So I wanted to make sure that that was brought up here at this video to because a lot of times, like you said, there's Voicetoskull, and then there's the people that are having the gassing and street theater that's going on, and then there's more as we go along. There's people that are categorized as, you know, certain types of whistleblowers that certain groups hate more than other groups of people, you know, and that's one of the things that we really need to start really being aware of, because but we want to do it in a kind and loving and kind way. So thank you on that.
Thank you, Wayne. And I could probably wrap up by saying I hope folks can visit the websites, download the free information. There's lots of information on targetedjustice.com and mine, ourlighthouse.com. And I very much appreciate your help and efforts to put this show together. Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you. And like I said, I'd really like you to come back a number of more times, you know, to make this place, you know, let's do a part 2, you know, give me the heads up that you want to do a part 2, you know.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely, Wayne. Love to do it.
So we'll do a part 2 then. And thank you for today, and thank you for all my viewers. And please make DVDs and share. Go in front of theaters. Go in front of places, malls that are having posters that talk about technologies and scenarios, Wi-Fi, in front of Horizon, in front of AT&T, and hand these DVDs and these pamphlets out. Thank you, and God bless you.